Love's Next Door, Chapter 5, Part 2. Justin had everything ready for his lunch and date with Cheryl. The wench. He had thrown a few oversized pillows on the thick blanket spread out on the living room floor, and the wicker basket beside it held covered dishes of baked chicken and his specialty, Caesar salad. Warm, crusty rolls nestled in a red checkered napkin beside a plate of assorted cheeses. He still felt guilty about his escapade last night with Stacy, and preparing his lunch for Cheryl would be his own way of making up for his crazy behavior. Lessening at least part of his nagging guilt. As he went to the kitchen to grab a couple of wine glasses and a bottle of chilled white wine, a small smile crossed his lips as he thought how guilt can twist one's mind. Last night, when he called Cheryl and she didn't answer, he had tossed and turned all night and only relaxed after speaking with her early in the morning. He shook his head, remembering all the crazy thoughts he had thought. She had apologized and said she hadn't answered the phone because she was still angry with him over the scene at the restaurant. Lion wench. He accepted the excuse. She was thrilled when Justin asked her to come over for a special lunch to try to put their fight and hurt feelings words behind them. He had planned this picnic in memory of the lunches they had enjoyed together on the beach when they first began dating. Placing the glasses and wine beside the basket, he returned to the kitchen to clean up a bit before Cheryl arrived. He really enjoyed cooking, but he had to admit he created chaos in the process. For a fleeting moment, Stacy found her way into his thoughts. He closed his eyes and asked for strength as the memory of Stacy drifted through his mind, the feel of her warm, naked flesh, the taste of her breasts. He groaned and hit his fist against the counter. That woman is screwing with my head, he muttered to himself, scrubbing the countertop a little harder than necessary. It's not going to happen again. I'm not going to think about her any more. Just as the words came out, the doorbell rang. He pushed Stacy from his thoughts and went to answer the door, smiling broadly as Cheryl stepped into the foyer and kissed him on the cheek. Hi, handsome, she spouted in an overly cheerful voice. Justin looked at her as she moved away. I'm glad you're in a better mood than you were last night. What happened? Did you win the lottery? He joked. No, I'm just happy to see you. Glancing over at the blanket spread on the floor, she laughed in delight. Oh, Justin, this is beautiful, she gushed, walking to the blanket and sitting down, patting the spot next to her, inviting Justin to join her, seductively brushing her fingers through her soft auburn hair. Stacy had forgotten the time and was absorbed in her manuscript when she glanced at the clock and realized it was late. She was late for lunch with Lizzie. Quickly she pulled on her coat and dashed from the house. Tugging open the restaurant door, she spotted Lizzie waving to her from the corner table. Stacy hastily grabbed a food tray and selected her lunch from the deli bar and rushed to sit down beside Lizzie, who was already munching on a salad. Sorry I'm late, she said. I'm mesmerized by this latest writer and totally lost track of time. Lizzie swallowed a mouthful of food. That's okay. I've only been here a few minutes, she said as she popped another forkful of salad into her mouth. They ate their meals in relative silence, neither one wanting to be the first to bring up the subject of Cheryl. After finishing their lunch, they ordered cappuccinos and waited for them at the counter. Well, Sherlock, have you uncovered anything yet? She asked curiously, curious to know more about the mystery man. Not yet, but I'm working on it. I thought I might follow Cheryl one of these evenings and see what turns up. Sure. Stacy laughed. Would you listen to us? We sound like a couple of bored teenagers. But it's going to be fun, Lizzie said, giggling. Poor Justin, he's so trusting and such a nice guy. What do you think he'll do when he finds out? I don't know, but I don't plan on being around when it happens. I knew something wasn't right the other night when they were together at the restaurant. They just didn't seem to be enjoying themselves, Stacy said as she gently stirred her cappuccino before taking a sip. Lizzie lifted her eyebrow in response and smirked. I know what you're thinking. I mean, before I danced with Justin. Stacy said with a grin of her own. Come on, Stacy, you still like Justin, and it irritates you that he's dating Cheryl, Lizzie said honestly. Stacy sputtered as she spoke. That's not true. I don't like him. Well, yes, I like him as a friend, but that's all. I don't like him in the way you think. Lizzie grinned, all the while watching Stacy dig herself deeper and deeper as she continued to deny her feelings, which were now becoming obvious to Lizzie. Okay, I believe you, she said slyly. If you say you don't like him romantically, then I believe you, kind of. Before Stacy had a chance to respond to the knowing remark, Lizzie, who had been gazing out the window, turned to Stacy. Her eyes were wide and her mouth gaping. Lizzie, what's the matter? He's here. The mystery man is here. She pointed to a car parked by the window. See the guy in the black car? That's him. That's the car. They both craned their necks and peered out the window just in time to see Cheryl pull up beside the mystery man, smiling broadly. They watched in astonishment as the man quickly jumped into the passenger seat of her car and greeted her with a long, ardent kiss. Then Cheryl put her car in gear and tore away from the deli. Stacy and Lizzie stared after them in disbelief, finally turning in unison to face each other, still in too much shock to say a word. Stacy broke the silence. Just what do you think she's doing? Now she's meeting this guy in the broad daylight? Now she's not even trying to sneak around? Lizzie lowered her voice and leaned toward Stacy. Well, the gossip in my office is that Cheryl is hot to get married. That's all she's ever wanted, which is why she never aspired to anything more than a sales clerk working in a fancy dress shop. She absolutely hates working, hates her boss, and hates that type of job. Typical Cheryl. Justin is really resisting a commitment, and my guess is... Lizzie rested her chin in her hand and raised her eyebrows, savoring her thought. What, Lizzie? Stacy leaned toward her friend, waiting for her to finish. I think she's playing one against the other and is trying to make Justin jealous. She wants him to find out, but she doesn't know Justin as well as we do, Stacy, and I hope I'm not wrong about that. Stacy noticed that Lizzie was frowning and her lips were tight with anger as they gathered their coats and scarves and headed out the door to their cars. As Stacy climbed into her car, Lizzie walked over and put her hand on the door. I'm so mad I could spit. Poor Justin is being played for such a sucker. I wasn't going to mention this, but that Cheryl is one busy lady. Justin must have invited her to lunch today at his house. On my way over here, I saw her car in his driveway. Suddenly, Stacy felt that her lunch wasn't going to sit very well. That's the end of Chapter 5. Tomorrow, on to Chapter 6. So, bye.